Bikes, Bass, Blackness, and Brilliance. J. Marie Hill, pronouns they, them. Token lover of all the aforementioned is Oakland lost and Midwest found. From scaling the work of New York Times bestsellers to creating the 2020 Sweet and Mutual Aid Fund to building a Black-led multi-city statewide trans resistance effort through the ACLU of Missouri. J. Marie is a multi-hyphenate strategist and artist who shows no signs of stopping. Lately, they can be found supporting the Moho Justice Coalition, working to decriminalize sex work, teaching youth and community about bikes as freedom tools, and cultivating our collective capacity for healing through live music. They are currently on a virtual tour promoting their first live EP, Love is No Fool, available July 2022. You can learn more about their work at blacktranscend.com and find them on Instagram at j.marie.is.holy or via the Black Trans Bike Tour. Join me in welcoming J. Marie. Yay.
Hello, hello, hello. Can you all hear me okay? See me okay? We'll see if the computer can keep up with all of the tech that it's being asked to do. But welcome to those who have been here. Welcome to those who are just getting here. Welcome to those who have been putting this work in all day. It's such a blessing to be asked to share from a perspective that might not be heard otherwise. And, to keep on keeping on in this virtual world, y'all, it's a lot that's being asked of us. So thank you for having me. I'm going to start to screen share and, throw one up for me to the tech gods as we all do our best to manage how this is all working for us. While I'm pulling this up one more time, if I could get like a confirmation from folks once you can see it, I'll give you a note when I'm really fully ready. But hold on, let's see. While I'm pulling this up, because of course computers want to act up here and there, I encourage y'all to consider that video, right? Think about what that brought up for you. Think about the ways that you're already interacting with the built environment, right? Just where you are right now, but also know that I am going to ask you some questions and going to encourage you to consider things that do require some thinking, even at this hour. So I'm actually not finding the screen that I had shared, so let me just reset the screen share. Sorry about that, y'all. So I'm going to pull this up, and then hopefully it doesn't give us any trouble. I'm pressing screen share, and then it's saying that your screen sharing is paused. So I tried to reset it, and it still wants me to do what it is thinking that
I'm gonna try something that might fix it.
Okay. And shout out to those watching on YouTube or coming around at whatever point in the world you are coming around. All right, so I see that I see the tech piece that you offered. It's still saying that it's paused. I wonder if it's because of the YouTube share.
Your practice screen never fully pulled down. So I'm gonna try one more thing. Give me one second.
Okay. And thank you all for hanging in there with us. Like I said, we're just keeping on. Such a beautiful space to be a part of. And I'm also looking forward to folks joining for the breakout after, because a lot of these conversations are only as rich as we can kind of see where we are in it, right? And think about how we need to show up to it and how we can be enriched by it moving forward versus just being a passive listener. And I know there's a lot of richness in this room. So I'm going to try one more time. When you're, give me the cue. I'll try it one more time. Okay.
One more time.
Awesome. Gonna try to minimize everything I don't need. And but let's see one more time.
I find sometimes when this happens, I have to hit the escape button in my browser. Sometimes the screen will go into like a hidden view.
Yeah. Okay.
Let me hit escape.
Yep. Let me try and reset it here. Y'all can tell me. It looks like it might want to cooperate now. Shout out to any other users of Canva in the building. It's a beautiful software that we love to have access to, even if it's giving us grief. You know what I'm saying? Okay, let's see. I have my screen pulled up, but it's actually not even pulling up on the options of screens to select. So that's unusual. But we will push.
It's on a hidden screen
Okay.
if it's doing that.
Yeah, it's just it didn't even pop up as like, oh, you can select this screen. So I'm just gonna download it again and maybe share it from like my
Yeah.
email or from my folder.
Well, we've got 13 more hours. So
Wow.
yeah.
What an abundance situation. Thank you so much for the reframe. Well, I don't want to take all that time, and it looks like I am just gonna have to present from the good old PDF, unless I can try this one more thing. Yeah, it doesn't look like it wants to show me the window. So
Are you using Chrome with Canva?
I was trying to. It was working when I tested it earlier. Y'all saw this.
Right. It's hidden. So right click your Chrome icon
Hmm.
and see if it'll give you the list of windows to show.
Okay, I see. I just try to show it up on my screen, and it looks like it's actually working now. Let's see. Can y'all see a picture of me with the butterfly mural behind me?
We do see it.
Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. Can you? Whoops. Oh, okay. Let's try it one more time. I think we're all set though. Beautiful, y'all. What patience, what endurance I'm witnessing in this group already. Oh, shout out to Live Transcription. We love that. Thank you so much for that. And yeah, I'm just gonna keep it moving. So, of course, you can see my whole situation now, but Canva is so restrictive today. Well, on this very exposed note of all the things we're trying to grow in, I encourage y'all to just sit back and listen. Now we've gotten it to work. Hopefully it's all clear. You can see it okay. One more time.
I'm going to have you make one more change. If you hover your arrow to the menu at the bottom of the screen and click more, you should see an option to hide floating elements.
Yeah.
You're on your Zoom menu. You want to hide the floating elements.
How's that?
That's it. Yep.
Thank you so much for the guidance and welcome everybody. Let's try this again. So again, just shout out to that beginning video because I do think it gave us a beautiful framing. So thank you again for just getting us here and creating this space. So I wanted to just bring you all into my perspective on what comes to mind when I think about the gender, place, and space conversation. And I forgot to say this while we were getting all the tech together, but I am a little in a recovery space. I have some sniffles, so I'll try my best to keep it pleasant and mute myself if I need to handle any bodily functions. And so just in this gender conversation, I find that I approach it a little bit differently than a lot of people have experienced before. So I'm going to give a little more information about myself in a moment, but I just want to prepare you for this being a entry point that is very much about the work that I've been doing as an example, and I think as a bridge to be living the reparations conversations that we deserve, to recenter ourselves around what reparations are and how that relates to our ability to build according to the built environment. I'm actually going to give us the journey as I just mentioned, and then I'll introduce myself with more language here. I think it could be easy to follow along. So today's journey, as I just said, we'll do these three things, right? We'll create shared language regarding the built environment, and through that shared language, we'll learn how to recognize, right, how and where gender interacts with the built environment. And second, we'll nuance the realities of safety and access to the built environment using what I have access to around lyrics, poetry, and some song. And then we'll also seek to understand how reparations and gender interplay in order to show up in solidarity and more solidarity with Black people and or Black trans people by incorporating a gender analysis in your work and making systemic shifts that live out the reparations due. So now just a little more about myself. So I wanted to give you this framing because I think it will help you follow along much easier as we go. I know there's a little more font on here than I might normally put on it, but I just want to get it out of the way, even though it'll come up later. So as for myself, My name is Jay Marie. That is my given name. I believe it to be my chosen name as well. And I go by Jay Marie as Holy when I'm doing, musical or artistic, even keynote options like such as this. And I founded a few things. I founded a few conversational spaces, a few LLCs, just to kind of see what makes the most sense, right? How do we bring abundance to our folks? And that ours is broad, as you'll see as I talk more. But the three things that I want you to know and remember as we'll come back to them are Black Transcendence, which is my kind of creative production house and is a space that I practice living out reparations. Two more things, the Black Trans Bike Experience and Moho Justice. So those three things will be things that will come up. We'll talk about them. I am currently on a virtual tour, so thank you so much for joining me and coming to what is actually my second stop. And then I just want you to know that I'm living and loving out of St. Louis, Missouri. I feel like that's really important and relevant because a lot of folks have never been to St. Louis outside of maybe a Ferguson visit if they were passing through at that time. It might play a role in your story if that's part of your work. And then I also think it's relevant because while I am from the Bay Area in California, I have found a richness in the soil here. And I think it's really important to be speaking from a place of the Midwest, right? A lot of people don't talk about the South enough, but they definitely don't talk about what it's like to live in the Midwest, right? Flyover country. And I feel really passionate about working from this place right now because I think it's here to teach us a lot. Myself feels kind of like boot camp as I live here. And also, I think it's the Midwest is a lot of times people leave, right? Versus coming or staying and building. And so I feel humbled to be here and to be learning from folks on that frontier. So I just want to refocus us here on what the built environment is. I know there are many experts in the room, experts across this weekend, and what I think of it as and how I interact with it, and I try to be really accessible, right, is that it's anything not naturally occurring in nature. It could be a lot of things, but one of the things that I see it as, right, is buildings and structures, outdoor and built objects, city streets and roadways. And while I can't be an expert on what it's like for you each on this call here or anyone who might be watching this later to feel safe, when I think of the built environment, I immediately think of safety, right? I immediately think of, what are the access points? What are the needs? What are the embodiment difficulties that folks have in these spaces, right? Because a lot of times we think of the built environment as just it's out there, but what about the things that people need when they're interacting with this built environment, right? And I don't really lead with my gender so much, but it's obviously important here. So I want to bring you into a little bit of a vulnerable place for me that I'll bring into how it connects to this built environment conversation. But I just want to give a note on this early tip, that a note on gender, right? A note on terminology. A lot of people really try, to stay on top of the language and to make sure they're speaking to the people they're speaking to exactly as they want to be spoken to. And that's so important, right? And I want to leave a little bit of space, right? Because I've done many a training on terminology 101 and trans this and, the difference between gender and sexuality. And what I have found is that sometimes our movement doesn't actually agree, right, on what things should be defined as or how people want to move in a particular term or, almost like organizing demand, if you will. And so I don't center a lot of my conversations on making sure that people know the best terms or the exact right term, because regionally, nationally, internationally, social media wise, there's a lot of ways that it can actually differ, even though we're making a lot of the same claims and a lot of the same hopes around how we want to be regarded, right? And so my note on terminology is that language makes things possible. It is rarely the answer in and of itself, right? So for me, I use all pronouns, but I will say they, them, because I think it's a portal, right? I think it helps people understand me, and I think it helps me make peace with the fact that someone is going to experience me however they're going to experience me, but it allows me to almost have a little bit more control over that engagement. And it takes me back to the built environment, right? Because a lot of times people who are trans or who experience the world where gender is the first thing someone sees about you do not have agency or do not have the full range of what it would mean to be safe in the built environment, right? Because it often wasn't built with them in mind. It often wasn't built by them. It wasn't built with bodies like mine, a fatter, rounder, doesn't want to walk the whole way, maybe type of body, right? And so I really wanted to call in not only that gender is not the only way to think about this, right, or being trans or these other terminologies that relate to gender. I don't want them to be reductive, right, or I don't want them to interrupt our ability to think about this, but I do want it to be a portal. And so I offer a portal. I'm going to offer a poem here just to get us grounded and thinking a little bit more robustly. Hopefully you can hear me once I play this track. Can you all hear this? Can you hear this background comment?
America taught me how to forget.
Can you give me like a heart sign if you heard that comment that just played? Okay, cool. Great, because then I can use this track behind me. Like I said, Zoom doesn't want to cooperate all the time, but look at us, okay? So that's just to help me know where the track is starting, and then I'll do this poem for you. That'll be over this track, this backing track that was it's an original composition by a colleague who's played with Ariana Grande and toured with some big names. So I'm grateful for their contribution here. And then I'll bring us back to grounding into this conversation around gender and place, and also asking you all to think about your safety and where you felt safe. The poem should be visible. Hopefully you can follow along here. And thank you for this space.
America taught me how to forget.
America taught me how to forget. My name, my pain, my stories, my glories, it's never enough for the beast to forget. Insatiable appetite this creature has that don't stop and won't till I give up my past. My toes, my fears, my nose, it's all in the running for me to let it ain't no part working it out. Here I am, y'all. My doors are ready, finally shouting my own truth. So steady, my wounds feel them shrinking. At least, yes. They festered place like built this from damn White House to blessed. Built this place and killed our race and spread lies in our death ways. Lies that pull us both down deep like a sword that's never settled. These wounds so real like they walls untouched. That's brand new. I see. I'm a couple of face the cards. Kill the masses and play the cards. It's not the time to my lips. I don't believe the lies you tell. The lies you tell, they won't get through. I don't believe the lies you tell. The lies you tell, they won't get through. I don't believe the lies you tell. The lies you tell, they won't get through. So, while America may have taught me how to forget, love me back. Thank you. I hope you could hear those lyrics, and if not, I hope you can see them on the screen. I find that poetry and music allows us to enter into a space differently than if we only have words, right? And I will also add that was me on the saxophone, even though they're playing the strings. So I bring this text in here, right? Because I want us to even right now clarify in our bodies a delineation between the belief that we have allowed ourselves to walk inside of around the lies that we only deserve so much safety in the world, right? That we only deserve so much accommodation, right? This conversation can only succeed if folks are present to your full agency. And that includes me, right? So I'm bringing you into that space with this poem and with this next question, where I'm going to ask you to think about where you feel safe and where the last time was that you have felt safe, right? And I'm actually going to offer a link in the chat that will, if you feel called, you can add your comments here around the last time that you felt safe in a space. And specifically, I want you to think about it, in relationship to your gender, in relationship to your body, but also, and actually now that I've hidden my controls, I have to find them again. Okay, I found them. I want you to just add, if you're able to click on this link, I want you to take a sticky, write your thought on it about the last place that you felt safe, or a place that you feel really safe when you go in the built environment, right? I want you to both think of that place, and then I want you to write what about that place on the sticky makes you feel safe, right? What about that that environment, the built environment of that location? Whether it's a a structure that's been erected outside in a nature environment, or it's your favorite cafe, or it's your home, your own backyard. What about that place? I need to know. What about that place makes you feel safe? And I want you to really think about it, right? And there's no, homework. I'm not, tracking you here, but I encourage you to on this sticky note here, just, you should be able to click on it. And if you can't, we can just keep it moving. But I really want you to take yourself seriously here and think about, where do you feel safe, right? And this will be something that maybe Thrivers Group can use later. If the board is editable, I apologize if not. And if it's not, feel free to put it in the chat, or in our panelists should be able to see it, and I can take the information from there. But I can share either way. So I encourage you to click on it if it works. And if not, just think to yourself. Because that's a key factor here, right? And I want to share, as you think about that for yourselves, where I feel safe, right? And I had to really sit with this, right? Because one, I do know that I am not necessarily someone who is always unsafe when I walk outside. A lot of people think of me as a big, bad, masculine person. That may not be my personal lived experience of my body, right? But I'm aware that people think of me that way. I'm aware that I don't have to carry the load or the weight, right, of people wondering what I'm gonna do to them maybe comes up, but I'm not often at this point in my experience of my body and my life on this end of catcalling, right? It happens, and I do feel unsafe when that happens. It's often in New York, can we be honest, right? Those boys really get at you, you know what I'm saying? These curves, they stand out there differently, I guess. But I just encourage you to think about this, maybe put it in the chat, maybe put it on the document. But where I feel safe, you can see this picture. This is my pastor, actually. Black woman, queer affirming, incredibly beautifully, just gifted at building community, right? And that's such a powerful thing to say, right? Because this church is almost over 100 years old, the building, right? And she has repurposed this space to make it a safe space for all these Black queer folks you see in this picture right now, right? She is shaping her life because of her life, the way it was shaped by HIV and AIDS and her family and the hush-hush energy around it. She has gone out of her way almost, what it feels like, right, compared to how other people experience and move their work, to build a space that is affirming of queer folks. And I find that is a direct intervention to most people's experience of built environments, specifically churches, let alone a holy space, right? And I will add to this list, I feel safe in my backyard, right? It's fenced in, it's taken care of by my non-binary neighbor. We have a garden, right? We heard some pop-pops today, and we decided it was fireworks, right? It wasn't boomy enough for a gunshot, but we hear those too, right? But my fence helps me stay safe, helps me know that I'll be okay in this space right here, right now, right? And what I noticed about that space as I was sitting back here and thinking and preparing for this conversation was what specifically about that backyard made me feel safe. And as I just said, I have a non-binary neighbor, right? I have a landlord who's already starting from the base of I believe you. I want to know how your experience is. And I share some of those experiences, right? They're not calling into question my feelings. They're not calling into question the way that my body occurs in the world, right? And those are some things that I brought in that came to my mind when it came to where I feel safe, right? And I know that my trans friends, my trans femme friends who don't have the luxury of just, having their own backyard baby or having a non-binary landlord neighbor, right? Oftentimes they tell me the places where they don't feel safe, literally everywhere, right? And I want to bring in that while I'm not going to be focusing the conversation on where I feel unsafe, because as I said, there's very few places that I have to actively think about that. What I can bring to you all is this conversation about transness and what to do and how you can manage the fact that it's the first thing that people think and see about you, right? And I'm grateful for the Unurbanist view here around trying to bring in the trans femme conversation, the trans women conversation. And I also want to call into the reality that a lot of people, when they think about trans women, femme folks, only know of people in death, right? Only know of people after they've been murdered, harmed, are an example of something, right? Less of being a person, right? And I have to bring that in here, right? Because as much as we might notice where we feel unsafe, many of us don't think about or are not in regular community with trans women and trans people broadly, right? So that impacts where we're going to be able to start a conversation. That impacts who we're even thinking of when we walk into a space, right? I'm going to bring up, as we continue on here, the ways that, my world is shaped by folks who are fat, folks who are trans, folks who have access needs, disability access needs, and are neurodivergent, right? And that completely shapes how I walk in the world, whether it's, immediate and something we have to plan for, or something that's just a low hum, right? There is the reality that while we are rarely 100% safe, it is still possible to track the patterns in our embodiment, right? And that's what I'm hoping folks were able to do, whether you put it on the Miro note or on your chat or in your, on your notebook at home. I want us to not only begin to notice and track the patterns in our embodiment, but also recognize, right, that privilege and access will shape who feels safe and who is believed when the time comes to shape shift or to adjust an environment in order for people to feel safe inside of it. And I bring in this note that trans women, a lot of the folks in my life, particularly Ripley, one of my colleagues who helped me with the Black Trans Bike Tour in 2019, pre-pandemic, right? I like to say BC, before COVID, even though we know BC is earlier, right? Ripley, made a comment that she doesn't, and I know she doesn't come out of the house very much, right? She is very much, and I want to show this so you can see who Ripley is. She is, this beautiful Black trans woman, but doesn't come out of the house very much. And yet, when I asked her to participate in the 2019 Black Trans Bike Experience, where I needed someone to drive the car, like a SAG vehicle, if those of you on the call are familiar with bicycles or longer adventure rides, you need somebody to, drive a car with supplies and things like that. She said yes, without even hesitating, and has said that with me multiple times. Has said, I believe in you, and I'm ready to come out if you're going to be there, right? And what I've noticed, and if you look at this, this line of bicycles, this is a line of Black folks, trans folks, queer folks, brown folks who have felt safe because I have said, hey, I'm going to go outside and bike. Y'all want to come? Right? And I'm bringing us, I kind of skipped ahead here because the Black Trans Bike Experience, one, is part of how the Unurbanist Assembly Community Thrivance Group, how we found each other. And I wanted to bring Ripley into the room because I love her so much. And it means so much that not only Ripley, but other people that I have, have pictured here have come when I've said, hey, let's do this thing, specifically because they felt safe in my view, right? And some of that has to do with my commitment to that. And some of that has to do with what I've learned through my embodiment, right? The ways that, I started the pandemic with, we put our masks on. I didn't actually have hair growing under my face, right? I took our masks off, I had more hair. It was just one of those things. Over the course of a couple of years, I started to grow them. I didn't seek it out. I didn't plan for it. And so some of it is, like I said, our embodiment, we can track the patterns and we can name, like, for example, transness, right, as a way that we're having to interact with space and then learn to become empowered and clear about our worth inside of that, right? And I bring in the safety element one more time because I want to name that a lot of Black trans women and trans folks broadly have not participated in the biking space as a rider, right? And I think that's a very, very, very integral piece of information for us to sit with, right? Ripley might sit on my bike for a picture. She might come to an event and get cute and get silly, right, with bikes around. But what does it say about our work, about our ability to keep people safe, if people are not even called to become empowered around moving themselves through space, right? What does it say about that space that they're not going to be safe? And how can we build a world where that is not the case? And so I find that as one of the main things that's at the root of some of my work, right, is how can I build a world? How can I build project after project where the base level is something that people don't have to question their safety or don't have to question whether or not they'll be believed, right? And I brought in this reparations screen that I'm going to go back to as we just kind of go back into the path that I was on initially before bringing Ripley into the conversation. I want to bring in Kayla Reed, someone who I love deeply, right, who is not a skinny person, right? I'm constantly learning from her ability to name what she needs in the world when there's not a chair, there's not a bench, there is, the access needs of outside are inaccessible, right? The things that she would need to enjoy an outdoor space are not there, right? And that's, whether that's because of access, about bodies, about ability, right? There's a lot of layers to that. And I'm grateful for those in my life who have helped me shape that. Miani in this picture as well, they had this fountain behind us. I think we felt joy looking at this built environment object, right? The fountain and the water moving through the space. But Miani, this is in Kansas City. We traveled, Kayla, Miani, and I traveled to Kansas City, right? To build on some of the work that I'll tell you about in a moment. But specifically being together, I had to account for their safety at all times, right? As a Black trans woman, as a fat Black woman, there are ways that people don't see them the way that they see me, right? And I feel accountable to that everywhere I go. Not just because I love them, not just because we're in community, but because they've taught me what it's like to demand your dignity in every space and every built environment you enter, right? We'll come back to watching Here, Queer, and Staying, but I do want to slightly a shift, but I think it's really clear, actually, the connection, right? And and I want to name that I feel like my work is practicing reparations. So I just want to sit with what reparations is just for a moment, right, before we start to wrap up and see how these entry points, these different entry points can be a space to practice reparations. Right, and I am not nearly as much of an expert as I'm sure many people across the weekend, the 23 hours, will be, but I just want to bring to the forefront of our mind, right, what the UN and even locally a group, Our City Defenders, has been building a campaign to ask the mayor, to push the mayor to develop these universal basic income and these other aspects of our community that would really be reparations, embodied, right? So beginning, just one more time, as we might have heard it all weekend, but reparations, right, is cessation. You have to stop the harm, right? We can't say we're sorry if we're still doing the thing, right? Restitution, we have to reestablish the situation that existed before the act was committed, right? That might look a lot of ways, but it's a number 2 step, right? Then there's compensation, right? It's required for, any financially accessible damage suffered. We want to make sure that wherever there was damage, we can repair it through compensation, right? 4th is satisfaction, right? Some instances where stopping it and restitution and compensation don't do the full repair that could be done, satisfaction is really important, right? An apology is part of that, right? Was it a satisfactory situation that you offered an apology, right? And then lastly, rehabilitation, right? That could be legal, it could be medical, it could be psychological, and other care and services. And I wanted to bring this in because while we're talking about spatial reparations, what I think the tie-in here is that every project that I've built has demanded that instead of waiting for Black trans people to die, or instead of waiting for those of us who are gender expansive to be so averse to living our lives this way, right? That we don't show up in our fullness, that we don't, God forbid, compete in a sport that then, people are saying, passing legislation that's saying we shouldn't be able to do that, shouldn't be able to be strong, right? Shouldn't be able to compete, shouldn't be able to be in the fullness of our body however it looks, right? There's a really powerful intersection there, I think, between not only having the reparations of access to built environment and space, but spatial reparations being, we want that everywhere we are. We want that in every form that we exist in, right? Whether I'm weak and not an athlete, whether I'm an athlete, whether I'm a biker, whether I'm a cyclist, whether I'm a poet, whether I'm a musician, we want people to have access to that. And when I think about the ways that I show up for other people, I find that I have to be a portal, specifically, and I'm bringing this vulnerability into you, right? I feel like my portality is because I've learned and I've become bigger because of the people that have served as portals for me, right? And knowing that whether or not I feel attached to the transness as an identity, whether or not I feel like I have demanded the world see me in a specific way, what I do know is I am less of a threat, right, for some people. I know that I represent access and privilege and light skin and curviness. I know that I have all of those in my pocket, right? And that part of my work in this lifetime is to accept and love my body regardless of who I'm accountable to. Firstly, I'm accountable to me, right? To love my body and to be present fully within it. And then to demand that everyone expect and interact with me in that same way, that I will be full and that they will come to me full as well, right? And so spatial reparations to me is so beautiful as a concept because it pushes us to think about how are reparations seen in the world, right? And as I said, I find that what I mentioned at the very beginning, Black transcendence, right? My spaces that I build, even though Moho came before and the Black Trans Bike Experience came before I actually came up with the title of Black Transcendence, I had to kind of put everything in a container because I noticed that I was having the same impact in different spaces. I don't know if you see this person laughing here. They're not Black and trans. These folks in the front are, and Quentin, shout out to Quentin, the best mechanic, best Black queer mechanic this side of the Mississippi, okay? I'm gonna put that on something too. These folks find themselves in joy, right, in these spaces. They find themselves safe. They find themselves able to grow, able to not know, right? And some of that may have to do with that that I was a kindergarten teacher, I was a 4th grade teacher. I love it when you don't know. That's a beautiful space to be for me, right? Not all people have the capacity to hold that conversation, though, especially as it relates to transness, right? So I find that even though I'm not doing this at the level of the government, what I have found is that I'm not going to be able to govern, even though I want to, and I want us to be in those seats of being in charge. A lot of times, gender and the ways that we tussle around it don't actually get us to the stage of getting full and then moving forward, right? We're often doing this kind of like tension practice with each other, right? And really pushing and saying, you should have known, or you should know this, and how come you don't know that? And I really invite us through this conversation to welcome people in, to not only not knowing, but to actually rising through with rigor, right, into the next step of, wow, here's what I needed to know. Great, let's keep it moving now that I know that, right? And so what I've noticed the factors are, I think, in that I'll name here between people who have participated in my work, and Moho Justice, I didn't speak this, but Moho Justice and Decriminalizing Sex Work, which if you look in this top right corner, these are boot campers. We created an advocacy boot camp last year, and I say we, meaning when I was at the ACLU of Missouri, we started a trans leadership campaign, and after a while, it was so white that I was like, this is not the conversation that we need to be having, right? Legislation, going to the Capitol, not everybody can do that. It was great. It was exciting to learn and to be able to move things at the level of statehood and in these other larger ways than most trans folks are willing or interested in having. But as somebody who wants to see us cared for at scale, I was really interested in how, under this Trump administration, how can I do my part? How can I put my Stanford education? How can I put my class, my light skin, whatever I got to work right now while we're all under attack? And given that my body has been read in these ways, and I just moved from super queer utopia, Oakland, California, Castro, all that, to St. Louis, I know what it's like to have the dignity of people expecting and experiencing me as trans or as gender nonconforming or as gender expansive, all these ways that I have been welcomed into my fullness, right? And so I wanted to be that for other people. We built this Decriminalizing Sex Work campaign. And in that space, we said, sex work should not be illegal, right? The work of caring for people who are caught up in any sort of trafficking, that is separate, right, from the fact that people traffic in pleasure. People can give pleasure to other people and people sign up for it. You called me. That's the energy, right? We're not waiting for people to tell us that it's a crime or that my squad here, whether they're workers, allies, or otherwise, need to be living in fear. I don't accept that, right? And so from the Black Trans Bike Experience space to the Moho Justice space to even my shows as J. Marie is Holy to even this space right here, right now, right? Explicitly naming the entry point as Black transcendence, which may bring to mind transgender identity or other things like that. But for me, it's really about transcending, right? It's about becoming something that we maybe thought we couldn't or weren't sure how we would do at, but here we are, right? We're consistently rising because we can, because we have breath in our bodies and that's all we can do with it. Why not rise, okay? So explicitly naming the entry point as one where it is clear that we are holding space for this reality, right? Leaving space for shaping outcomes and paying people. I love to pay people, y'all. I love it, right? I'll pay people in advance even if I'm not getting paid because I want them to never feel, ever feel used, right? Not in the world that I'm building, not in the world that I give my consent and my agency towards, right? And through those factors, I find that people feel a lot of times that we're living out the reparations we deserve, right? One of my taglines, even before this talk, I literally say reparations comes in many forms. I literally say that all the time, y'all, like all the time, okay? And I say that because I think it's true, right? And the only way we are gonna get to it at scale is if we are present in our lives and demanding it every day. Just like Adrienne Marie Brown, Emergent Strategy, if you haven't looked that up, fractal energy, right? Something small is all. The way something is on the small level is how it will be in full, right? And I just want to bring us home with some imagery around what has been built through Moho Justice. Just to give you a little bit of context, we did do a 2020 report that showed what almost 200 sex workers in the state of Missouri were feeling as the pandemic hit, right? As many people were turning to OnlyFans, if y'all remember that conversation, and folks who have been working were saying, wait a minute, we've been out here, what y'all doing over here? You know what I'm saying? Right, we've been criminalized. Are y'all ready to have that conversation? Or you just want to get a little cute little, Slate article or different articles that kind of highlight, right, that we're in this now, right? We've had open mics, we've had healing justice spaces. This is a sound bath event. This is one of our shirts that my co-founder Indigo is wearing in that picture. I see a raised hand, so I'm almost wrapping, and the breakout actually will be an incredibly beautiful space to have some of these further conversations. I showed you the Black Trans Bike Experience, and similarly, as I said, J. Marie is Holy. This is a party over here, pure holy love. This section says, pleasure is power, right? And so I wanted to just leave you with how can you and where can you practice reparations and repair, right? Where can you explicitly name the entry point as one that is accepting and welcoming of folks who are either working out their gender or feeling clear about their gender and want a place that's affirming of that, right? Where are you leaving space or creating space for folks to shape outcomes? Excuse me, right? And I'm gonna take a drink and let you think about this. Scream for a moment, because we need it. Excuse me, y'all. Thank you for taking a moment with me. Whew. Thank you. And we're wrapping up here. My throat might tell me that we're done before I'm done. But I see a comment in the chat about asking, why aren't non-queer people, is how I'll read that, so accepting to LGBTQ people. Thank you for the love. And I will say, I think this is a great closing thought, honestly, because I will say that people have not been given the permission that we live with. That's what I'll say, number one, okay? I'm also seeing that folks added in the chat things that make them feel really safe and connected to the world and the earth. I appreciate y'all for offering that. Excuse me. And so as I wrap here, it's perfect timing for the recap. I think people haven't lived with the permission that we have, that we live every day, right? And that is really the call. That is the call for us to live with that full permission in our own bodies, queer or not, right? To not only live with that permission, but to create space to learn from others who already do, right? If it's not your ministry, you don't need to take it on. You're not the expert, and that's okay, okay? You're not the expert, and that's okay, right? So I want to just bring in these last few points. And if you have a quote or a question, please put it in the chat or join us in the breakout where my comrade Hadari and I will be offering some embodiment, some space to process some of these. I have some questions for you to leave with. And I want you to just have these 4 points. And I'll play this song as we're able to, or maybe as we exit the Here, Clear, and Staying song. I often end with it. Like I said, I think it's important for you to hear a voice of song and meditation. But I ask that you track your body, right? Track the ways and the places that you feel safe. As a cyclist, I'm going to give one last example, that the bike shop, right? Very white often, very cis, very straight, or maybe a little gay here and there. I don't know what they be into, you know. But it's not always a place that we feel safe, right? Those of us who are black, queer, trans, and otherwise, you know, not white men, right? A bike shop as a built environment is a place that could benefit from having an explicit entry point of queer rides, black rides, trans rides, right? These things that are not necessarily isolating your identity, but acknowledging there is an entry point that you might want, right? And so I want to acknowledge that the built environment may not be built for you and mine. And so I encourage you to track your safety and stay grounded in your embodiment and supporting others in doing that as well, right? I remind you of those 5 reparation steps: cessation, restitution, compensation, satisfaction, and rehabilitation, right? And as I said at the beginning, don't believe the lies, right? Part of tracking your body and tracking your safety is where and how do you actually feel what you feel, right? You have to remember, you don't need to believe the lies that they tell. The lies that they sell, don't let them through, okay? And I'm going to close with a line that hopefully my voice will let me share with y'all. I'm going to take another sip and let y'all soak in these points while I leave you with a line from one of my favorite artists, Jamila Woods, but also a line from me at this point. This is my first single off of the Love Is No Fool EP that I recorded back in February. And I'm going to leave you with these quotes because, you know, sometimes it feels like you got to start over, right? And I want to bring in, on this note, my colleague LL Jimeno, who passed last year, who I deeply feel in my spirit sent me this song when they were ready to go. The lyrics say, "Meet me in outer space. We could spend the night. I've grown tired of this place. We could start again." And how that might go in song, if my voice will let me. Meet me in outer space. We could spend the night. I've grown tired of this place. Yeah, yeah, yeah. We could start again. Thank you all so much for having me. I am on a virtual tour. Come find me out in the world. And I have a show tomorrow. I have the Alley Media Conference. You can find me there. I don't want to take too much time from the Thrivings Group in this beautiful space, but find me at blacktranscend.com. Shout out to Oscar, present in Atlanta with us, and just thank you all so much for this. I have these breakout questions. If we get to them in the breakout, beautiful, and if you join us in the breakout, even better. But thank you all so much. I look forward to chatting with you more in the future, maybe in Puerto Rico, you know, as a Puerto Rican person, you know what I'm saying? We're interested, but thank you all so much for having me.
Thank you, Jay Marie. We're going to look for you in the breakout room. I have a quick story. Do you remember going to the Movement for Black Lives conference?
Definitely, yes.
So I'm gonna make this connection to transportation planning.
Please.
I was in my doctoral program in San Francisco and was sent to the conference by the school, although I voluntarily was going. But my school paid for me to go to the conference and did not pay for lodging.
Mm.
And you and your friends said, "Are you also from Oakland?" And I said, "Yeah." And y'all let me room with y'all. And one of the moments that really changed my life and inspired me to start urban planning and to really focus on transportation planning was when we saw that young boy on the train platform, 12 years old, literally being kidnapped by transit police. And I won't incriminate us on here, but I will never forget the way we came together that day and what I saw in your eyes and what we were all willing to do in the name of that young person's future. So I was surprised to see that my staff had somehow found you. And they were excited to come across you. They reached out to me and said, "Okay, we found somebody." I said, "I know this person."
Wow.
So, everything happens for a reason, and I'm glad to see that you are also doing work that frees us to move about without restriction and without threat of violence. So
Mm.
it's good to see you.
Such a beautiful reflection. Thank you for sharing that and for being there. And just shout out to anyone else who has that space in their story because it was very meaningful for a lot of us. And so I don't think it was an accident that we back here now. Let's get into it. You know what I'm saying? Thank you for making space. I appreciate
That
it.
means we're supposed to do the work,
Oh, cool. We out here. We getting busy. We getting down. Right? That's what we know.
Definitely. I will see you and everyone else in the breakout rooms. Please migrate to unurbanist.com if you're still looking for the correct Zoom link to participate. See you in a minute.